Call my name.
I said, I can't.
Why don't we kind of gather ourselves into for 11 o'clock-ish. I'm trying to keep an eye out for our folks online, and I'm realizing I got the wrong glasses on. Hold on one second here. Right? You're a little blurry.
Oh,
And if you ever say anything to me in church and I cannot see you or I can't tell either. All right. These progressive lenses are probably the best I've ever had, but they still are very narrow. And so when I find my just right.
Find that sweet.
And so in church, it didn't work out very well. So the reading glasses are much better. All right. So I'm like I said, I'm going to keep an eye on the Zoom, and I may run over there and hit a little button, or maybe see if somebody could get the participant on. If I notice somebody in the waiting room. But why don't we go ahead and begin? I'll open this up with a prayer. This is actually something that was a banner that was inside of St. David's Cathedral in St. David, Wales, and it really spoke to me. It's called The Accidental Pilgrim, and especially for that particular church where they are located. St. David is right along the coast of Wales. They get a lot of I think cruise ships through. They get a lot of tourist people, and there's a coastal path that goes beautifully. You'll see some pictures of that. It also, you've got a lot of visitors there, and so this kind of addresses that. And I'd like us, since most of us are here on a weekly basis, it may not seem to resonate. I want you to maybe just close your eyes for a moment and think of that time when you were that person, when you were that pilgrim, when you were arriving somewhere that wasn't familiar to you, or maybe your relationship with God has not been going well, and you find yourself in a sacred space, a new place. Imagine this is the welcome that you might hear. Now, there are a few words here that aren't typically ours, that perhaps are Welsh, and I know I'm going to blister up one of these, but one of them is not necessarily Welsh, but it is the Frisianing. Frisianing means to shake, to fight. And then we've got Glyn Rosyn, which is the region where St. David is said to have had his first Eucharist. That's mentioned in here. And then there is the word croeso, which means welcome in Welsh. And I'm sure I am not saying that correctly, but croeso. So let's pray this. I don't know why you've arrived, whether just because we're there, or out of faith's determination, like the myriads who've come before to earn celestial favor. But no, it can't have been always like that. A frigid spiritual transaction. The miles, the blistered steps from horizon to horizon to pay for paradise. There had to be a Frisianing of souls in tired haste the last mile to Glyn Rosyn. Surprised by the sudden sight of journey's end, almost at journey's end. At least that last mile was downhill. And here you are, diverted by curiosity from the coastal path, seeking some solace on a vacation rainy day, on a taster tour from your ship, granted an hour to inherit centuries. Or coming with heart already aflame to claim the shrine's promise. No matter. Here you'll find croeso and a whiff of heaven, not for sale, not to be auctioned for your deserving deeds, but free, as in truth it always was. Welcome, pilgrim, by intent or just looking chance. Amen.
Amen.
So as you heard in the announcement time, I decided to try to break this up into two groups. I've got about 175 slides today. I couldn't get through them yesterday, so we'll do the best that we can. But I really want to share with you parts of this journey that I just was not able to do if I tried to rush through and get all of this done in one fell swoop. To start off with my trip, well, I'll start off with this little image that Emily encouraged me to use. He and Carolina and I went to the museum in Edinburgh, and there was this painting, and she said, "Oh, Dad, it's just like you on sabbatical."
Yeah.
Just like me on sabbatical. The Reverend Robert Walker skating on Duddington Loch. 1795. So why not? You know, why not? I have to tell you though that as I was starting to go, I was in the airport, ready to leave for Scotland. I got very nervous because there's always been somebody on the other end of wherever I'm going, right? And this time there wasn't. And who's going to help me find the bus? Who's going to help? I mean, this usually there's somebody, even at a centering prayer retreat, that I may not know anybody, but they're there to build a community. We're going to be, you know, and there's somebody. And so that really started to kind of get to me before I got there. And I thought to myself, well, you'll be okay.
You're a big boy.
You're a big boy, you know, and you can handle this, right? Well, when I got to Heathrow Airport, I flew straight into Heathrow and then from there to Glasgow. I had an 8-hour layover. And so security, as you may know at Heathrow, when you're coming from the States, is still really strict. You go back through and they do all this stuff and they checked all my luggage and did it. And on the other side of that, a British Airways agent saw my ticket and she said, "You have 8 hours?" And she said, that's not right. That's not. And she went and got me 20 pounds of vouchers for dinner. And she said, "I'll see if I can get you on standby." And she did. I had a 3-hour wait, and I thought to myself, I am not alone.
Yeah.
And I know this. Nobody is. I know this. And so off I went. And as you may recall, not sure why. I don't know if that's somebody or if that's. I don't think it's my speaker.
It's not somebody in the waiting room, is it?
No.
No, good question though. Good question, but no. But as you may recall, these are the dates, rough dates for the travel. But I flew into Glasgow and I went from there to this little island off the coast of this larger island called Iona. And from Iona, then I went back to Glasgow, kind of regrouped, and went down all the way down to an area called Carwarden, which is where the Gladstone Library is in Wales. We were just barely in Wales right here, and then kind of did a harrowing drive all the way down to St. David here. And then from St. David, I went all the way back to Glasgow, regathered again, and went to this little island right over here called Islay. And from Islay, I went over to Edinburgh, met Jennifer and Emily and Carolina, and then we went up to Inverness. Emily and Carolina ended up doing the tour up along the highest parts up along the highlands here. Then we went over here to Luss, which is where the games were, where the Highland Games were. Came over here to a castle, and then back to Edinburgh. They flew on, and from here, then I went on down here, Melrose-ish in this area, and did the St. Cuthbert Walk, and then from Lindisfarne Island went down to Durham, and then flew back home. So that's it. I'm almost 7 weeks, and you know I'm a little ashamed of myself because it was 46 days, and I should have known biblically, right? 7 sevens. What was I thinking? 3 more days, and I would have been there for the anyway. I can also tell you I was ready to come home though. You know, being gone for that period of time. So Glasgow was kind of my gathering place, as you can kind of tell from that. That's where I kind of gathered myself. I didn't get to see a lot of the city. I did the Rick Steve's his little thank you, Kathy, for doing that. The Rick Steve's little guide to the walking tour of the downtown area. And I thought it was very interesting, very it's the largest city in Scotland, but it's very useful and it's very hip, I would have to say. Where I was staying was kind of a young place, and all of the pubs and all of the bars were very much geared towards a real young audience and participants. But I'll just got a few shots here, and I cannot remember the name of the main kind of shopping street in Glasgow, but that's what
Cannon
this,
Street,
what is it?
the Cannon Street or Socky Hall Street?
Sake Hall, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's a Sake Hall along here. That used Buchanan,
Well, they're both.
yes, both the same idea here though, but I just enjoyed it so much. This is along Buchanan Street, and then there's a ping pong here. There's some history. I know there must be some history around that, but I thought that,
Is that a permanent sculpture?
yes, it is.
So it's steel
It's
or
there.
some kind of.
I guess it is.
Okay.
Kind of metal.
Mhm.
What did I do? Oh dear. Okay, Spotify wants to tell me all about all the things they have for us. Here we go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Spotify. The Museum of Modern Art. And out in front, they have Lord Wellington. And Lord Wellington's pretty well decorated like this all year round. They have a parking cone on him. They decorate with little appliques on the horse every here and there every now and then. It's got such a spirit of lightness and sense of humor. I just found Scotland to be full of a sense of humor. And that was just a very good emblem of that for me. And then there are these murals that you find pretty much on little alleyways that you might think twice about. You look down and go, I wonder if that connects or not. And then you see this and you go, well, I don't care because I have to go find out what this is all about. And I don't know much about how it got there, but I found these in different places along the way and just was enchanted by it. Yeah.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So Glasgow mostly though was for me was where Bill's gonna get his act together, right? Because I flew into Glasgow, I gave myself a full day, and then the next day heading to Iona. And the way to Iona, this is where I was staying. This is the Sandyford Hotel, which was built at the turn of the 20th century, and it creaks like I creak. It was lovely. It was kind of walking along. Now they go, my knees gonna feel like that about now. I have to tell you, my luggage. I named my luggage. I had a 50-pound bag that I called Bert, and then I had Ernie was my backpack, so I had Bert and Ernie, and so kind of hauling, because nothing has an elevator, right? So hauling Bert up those steps, I felt like I was creeping right along with those steps, right, every step of the way. And so from Glasgow to Iona, it involves a train ride, a ferry, a bus ride, and a ferry. And I knew if I screwed it up down here, forget it.
Yeah.
So I spent about a half a day making sure I knew what train station I was gonna, went to the train station. It was a little confusing, my ticket from ScotRail, and so they explained it all to me, what time it's gonna be, what time I should be there, Bert and Ernie, the whole 9 yards, so that I could get there nice and early and make my train. And as it turns out, if I missed that train, they're going all the time. So I could have done, but anyway, they kept me off the streets on that first day in Glasgow. And so this is a trip on the next day over to Iona. It's a train ride. This is a beautiful train ride. Up to Oban. And I was so struck by the scenery, by and I've got a few pictures of this. It reminded me so much of Eastern Kentucky, and I thought to myself, this is why it felt homey kind of for folks who are moving here from Scotland, Ireland. These very sharp peaked hills, but they're green. They aren't like the Rockies, but they are steeper than and sharper looking than what I was accustomed to seeing in the Appalachians. And but just beautiful. I sat next to a young woman who was heading out to her grandmother's house way out here somewhere in the Outer Hebrides, and her grandmother had passed, and it was exam time. And so she's taking like 3 ferries beyond where I was to get to where she needed to be to spend a week studying in this little island by herself. So I thought, well, that'll no internet out there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
No distraction. And so it starts off with the ferry here, then the Caledonian. I forget what it's called. Macal, I think is what it is. Caledonian ferry line here, and off we were, and it's kind of scenery along the way, just beautiful. And then we got on the bus. The bus ride was just amazing. It was just, just for me, those narrow little roads, and it was what they call a C, which means that they've got passing places. They build in these little out pockets that you can pass each other, which is really handy to have. I was on a lot of roads that didn't have those kind of things. I wish they had, and people behind me wish they had. But for the bus driver, and that massive, and then they would come across a lorry of some kind or another, some big truck, and just watching them kind of dance, you know. And you back up a little bit, and then they go, and then they go forward. And not in our bus, but some other people who took another bus across. At one point, you go through this really narrow bridge, and there's stone walls on both sides, and the bus driver slams on the brake, gets out and adjusts one of the rocks,
Oh,
gets back in and drives. This guy is good. That wasn't our bus driver, but that was ours just kind of went on through. Local knowledge. Right. But just amazing to me. And here's more of that landscape along the way. And then when I got to Iona, took the ferry across, this is the view out my window.
beautiful.
Right? It was helpful getting an early booking, you know, and so I was able to, they asked, you want a view of the bay? Sure, you know. And so that was what greeted me every single morning. And I have to tell you, Iona, a lot of the language people use is magical. I think maybe in our Christian tradition, we might think of liminal as being that kind of thresholdy place where we feel the spiritual and the earth together as one. Just this island just really did permeated. I heard it, and then I was able to kind of experience that. What I also experienced was the cold. On Sunday morning, now I got there on a Saturday. Sunday morning, I woke up and just absolutely full-blown cold, itchy nose, watery eyes, just, you know, everything's just like all right there. It just, and so that had a little bit of an impact on the time. So most of our focus of our time here during the week was here in the central area, and near Baylor Moore, and the Abbey is right here. The hotel is right next to that. The brown lines show the paved roads. After that, it's all paths, you know, but easy to follow paths, and so a lot of walking, an awful lot of walking here. Dune E is the highest point and we've spent one afternoon going up to the top of that. We spent some time at the North Beach here. This is our first outing we did. We went all the way down here to St. Columbus Bay. We also, I spent a little time right along this area exploring in the evenings. The sun really, it's set, but it never got fully dark. And I got a picture of that around midnight or so, and you can still see where you're going.
Oh, right.
Okay, so it's about a mile across, maybe,
Okay.
you know, at the widest point, maybe about a mile, 3 miles this way. We were supposed to do just to walk the island here, the circumference of the island, it was about supposed to be 9 miles or so. So if that kind of gives you an idea,
Yeah.
it's walkable, it's manageable. So that's just kind of a general sense of the island itself. The pilgrimage, as many of you all already know, was sponsored by John Philip Newell. He does this maybe 4 times during the summer, you know, June, July, and again in September. And it really is exactly what this says, a week of reflection, and to hear him teach and read and be around him and his wife Allie was phenomenal.
How many people, oh,
Then it-
that answers my question.
Yeah, right. Here's an interesting thing. I don't think all of us are here, but there are 40 altogether,
Okay.
retreatants.
Okay.
And 31 came from one group
Wow.
called The Well. And The Well is a group that formed right after COVID began. And it's a group of Catholic people living in the Chicago area. And they just formed this online group and they really bonded. And then they decided, after reading several of his books together after a few years, that they wanted to give John Philip Newell an award. And so they gave him an award and he showed up for this, right? And so this little group of people, and he said to them, you know, you should come to Iona sometime. Okay, so they did, and they made arrangements, and it explains to me there are 2 things that happened when I was trying to get myself reservations, which were like getting Rolling Stone tickets. I mean, it was like I'm up in the middle of the night trying to find it. They're about to go online, you know, and I'm like trying to plug it in, and they just filled up Zoom. And I think there was like 31 places that
Yeah.
went like that, and it was late getting launched, probably because it took a little organization to make the spaces for this group here. But, and they were surprised that there was anybody else. They were like, what are you doing? They thought they had him all to themselves. But they were very welcoming. They called the others of us the Nine. Oh, you're one of the Nine, so it was like our gang name, is the Nine. And we had a great time. They were very welcoming. It did change the dynamic, however, as you can well imagine. They knew each other. There were inside things that were going on and communication. But it was a lovely group of folks.
Are you in the picture?
I am.
You in the blue shirt? Inside you.
Where am I? Oh, yeah, back in the row.
There you
And,
are.
and Sarah is also an Episcopal priest, and so
Okay.
she's one of the Nine also. So we were, kind of gang friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you never before?
I did not. No. Yeah.
Was there any other clergy of any faith?
Yes, there were a couple of other folks of different denominations, not Catholic, but there was a Methodist minister and then a non-denominational minister also.
Did you talk about the beers on
They talked about the Bears a lot.
it? Right.
So my typical day, we woke up, had our breakfast at the St. Columba Hotel. Fantastic place, just wonderful. There was a morning meditation that happened, and John Philip would start us off with a bit of a meditation, a little reflection that he would offer. Then about 20 to 30 minutes of silence, and then we would come out of that chanting Om Shalom Amin over and over again. I've got this, you'll hear that. We then went on to a lecture that he gave. And this is one of my, I kind of wish that he had a little more room for conversation. He stood and he read from his book, basically. He had it in manuscript form. He read us one of the chapters and then we were done. We would have like a little small group. Rosie and I would maybe talk about what we heard, and then that was that. And so I kind of wish we'd had a little more interaction with him about his writing itself. But he's wonderful to hear and listen to. And then his wife, Allie, he's back up. Here's John Philip right here. And this is his wife, Allie. And she reminded me of a Middle Earth elf, She just was one of these very powerful presence about her. She was bright. There's a brightness about her, a wisdom about her. And so she led us in movement, the sacred movement. These were kind of indigenous physical exercises that were done from different parts of the world, really, every day. And that was wonderful also. I was off to the side with my cold, trying not to sneeze and runny nose and what have you. But anyway, then we had lunch. Then we did a little exploration in the afternoon. And then the evening was pretty much to ourselves. There was one evening where the town of Iona just had a little festival. They had some folks come play music, and their son plays fiddle in the band. So we heard Cameron play, and that was lovely and fun. And then I did my own exploration because you could. The sun was late setting. Let's see. Here's the St. Columba Hotel where we stayed.
Did you have full Scottish breakfast?
They did have that, and I had vegetarian versions of that. They had veggie haggis. It was really funny. If you can imagine, So here's the Abbey. And then there are little bits of kind of ruins along places along here as well. The Abbey was built right around the end of the 12th century. And now St. Columba arrived here in 563 and immediately built a monastery on this site. And so this is resting kind of on the grounds where it is said to have always been the presence of the Abbey. There is a community that lives in this area, that maintains this Abbey, that has prayer every day. And it's a lovely thing. I had one of my big check boxes for my trip was to have Eucharist with the Iona Abbey. I've been reading from their prayer book. I've been singing their hymns, and I had this cold on that Sunday.
Oh, no.
And I had folded up toilet paper. I couldn't, there's nothing open, right? So I had toilet tissue and I had folded that up and I stuffed it in all my different pockets, right? So I was like, I was ready for, and I had a mask, and I didn't even get to the first hymn before I'd gone through everything and it's just, and I had no medication with me. I didn't think of that ahead of time. I got some Scottish versions of the medicine we have here for colds worked great, but that was later on Sunday afternoon when things started opening a little bit. As far open. Anyway, I didn't get to really do that. I had to kind of run down the aisle with my nose running. So not the last. I've got to go back for that. But the Abbey is just beautiful. And stone is just fabulous.
Colors.
And yes. And that's the sky. That's the sky for a whole week.
Wow. Yeah.
Look, they said it had been 20 years since they had not had a week without rain at all. Nothing. It was like that. It just
Wow.
Yeah.
and here's the interior. Just gorgeous. And the choir stall along. This is St. Michael Chapel. St. Michael was built a little bit later, maybe a century later. So this is John Philip called it the new edition. It was only built in the 1300s or something like that. And so this is where we would gather every morning for our prayer time as we would start our day. And
Was there any way to have music?
in the main Abbey Church, yes.
There's an organ.
Yes, there's an organ there. Yes. Here in Michael Chapel, there was not. And we would sit along these little, and Andy was asking about this yesterday. I don't know what the function of the table was, but there's this row of sitting here and then a row along the wall, and these chairs really creaked.
Oh.
Yes, and here's people who really are accustomed to being in silence or sitting still for 20 or 30 minutes, and every little movement. It was hilarious, but really managed very, very well. It was very, very quiet during our silent prayer time. So and John Philip was sitting back there in the bishop. I call it the bishop chair back there, right back there. Probably was the abbot's chair. And here's our channel. You can listen to this. Takes a minute to start. Oh, it's turned off.
Battery 80%. Connected to L8B2 UB77 MC0 and byphone 28.
How we came out of the silence. Those weren't my shoes, by the way. That was a woman named Ellen who reported that. It never occurred to me to record the thing, as we were in the middle of doing it.
Surely there's.
What's that? Right, these little Yeah, yeah, no, I had my
Nice
big old, yeah, right, nice socks. Yeah, that's not me. And this is, they call this the ruins, and there are a lot of the main abbey building is about the only one that's been preserved the way it is. There's a nunnery next, that was built at the same time and started off the very same time when Columbus first got there. And that is in ruins now. There are a lot of ruins nearby. But and they've got several of these large Celtic crosses, and as he was reminding us, it is kind of this combination of the Celtic sense of the earth and the circle, the importance of the circle in Celtic spirituality, and the representing the sun, representing the earth, combined with the cross itself. And that's very typical of that. This is the St. Martin cross. This was constructed and built around 800 AD, and is in really exceptional shape, considering the elements there in the wind and what have you. And this is the nunnery wall, and I love how just things grow. It just that island was just full of growth and life. And I was mentioning yesterday that I asked John Phillip, where are the spiders? I mean, I've got flies this big flying in and out of my windows open all the time, right?
Yeah.
They're all in there, and I'm thinking this is juicy paradise for the
Yeah.
spiders. I mean, where I didn't see a single spider web. Where he said, well, it's too windy, and so they're all on the ground. You got kind of ground level,
Yeah.
but the winds kind of keep them from being able to kind of build the webs that you might typically walk through.
And the wind blows the seeds into the stone walls.
Okay, there we yes, yeah.
It's amazing how things will grow up through asphalt and
Mhm.
keep it, you just can't.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's
The power
it's
of that.
creating a little fertile bed there for the next ground, right?
Yeah.
This is a sculpture that's in the cloister center of the abbey, and it's called the Descent of the Spirit. I was just very struck by this, and I wish we could probably spend an hour talking just about this piece of sculpture here. It's very intriguing, but I'm already aware that I'm behind my schedule, so I'm going to try to keep us moving along here. This is St. Aaron's Chapel. This is probably my favorite place to be indoors. It's very bare. There's hardly anything, just four walls and a bench along each side. But it's very quiet, very peaceful, and it's been there forever. Graveyard outside of here, and I just found it to be a very peaceful place to go inside and pray. And this is St. Columba arriving. There are many images like this of Columba in a boat, arriving at the shore. This is in St. Lawrence Chapel. This is called Bishop's House. This is where kind of what the Scottish Episcopal presence on the island is. And there's a retreat going on there at the same time. There's a fellow there that was preparing to, and I think left while we were there, to walk from Iona all the way to Lindisfarne, walking it all, right? 250, 300 miles. I don't know how far that was for him. And he's going to have a podcast of his journeys along the way. So some people are kind of listening and following along. But it is really very pretty in there. We didn't, of course, spend very much time. But this is the altar. And I just thought, what a beautiful frontal and just gorgeous. And I just love trees. I want you all to see this tree. To me, there's something about that.
Do you know what kind of tree?
I have no idea what kind of tree it is. But I'm not, look at how broad it is. Look at the reach of those branches. And then when you look, it sits in the children's school, right? So they have kids on the island until about third or fourth grade, maybe third grade, and then they go to boarding school after that. But this is the school. And look at how low the branches are. I mean, anybody can climb up in there and have fun. And it really spoke to me. So we had a little thing that we did each day. And on Sunday, this is the day where my cold really hit, but off we go anyway. And Allie led us in building a mandala on the beach, on that north beach that I showed you at the very top. And there it is. And she'd drawn in the sand kind of 4 different quadrants, and she talked at great length, and it was fantastic about 4 different elements and how the importance of help people then we were told to go and find two objects. One object was to represent who you are right now, and another object is to represent your intention, what you'd like to be in a week, whatever that intention, whatever intention you brought with you. And so I found the driest piece of driftwood you can imagine, with moss hanging off of it, and I think it's maybe back along in here is where I ended up putting that, and John Philip was like, wow. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty tired, pretty burned out. And then I found a almost perfectly round green stone, and I thought, this is my intent, is the greening, and that became my word during my time on Iona was greening, and that certainly did happen. So this is the mandala that we did at the very beginning, and then on day I didn't give you a chance to look at that. On day 2, well, this is actually Tuesday, so we are now 3 or 4 days into all this. This is Dooney. This is that tall hill, we'll call it. And I was always thinking, how do you get up that? Well, Allie one afternoon said, who wants to go up to the top of Dooney? And I'm like, oh, and several of us said that would be kind of a fun thing to do. And you can see a little tiny thing right up here. And there's actually a cairn, a collection of rocks at the very top of this. And you'll see a picture of me posing in front of that.
Are you allowed to add to it?
Yes,
Oh.
but good luck finding a rock up there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, somebody brought something with them.
Take
You
your
got-
rocks up with
You
you.
got to plan ahead of time. Yes, yeah.
With their path,
What's that?
with their path.
There's a kind of a path. Yes. And it goes through people's properties, and I didn't mention this yesterday, and I forget what they call it. It's kind of like a free access in Scotland. That really, most land you can walk through, that you're free to walk through. You get to England, not the same thing, but for much of Scotland, and they post it, there'll be signs that say bull in pasture. I've got some pictures of like an angry bull, like a snarling bull. But here's the view from the top of Dooney, and you can see all the way around the island. This is Mull. This is where the bus ride came across all along here, and then the ferry was across to Iona. And more views from the top.
How many people live on the island permanently?
I don't remember exactly. I remember Lindisfarne is about 80 people. I think there are more, maybe like 110, 120. There's more of a permanent presence on Iona. And so this is a hard place to live. Yeah. And they are very, very welcoming. It's just amazing. This is the kind of see the monastery down below here. And there is the back of Allie, and in her hand here are rushes. I didn't know what rushes were, but we found out what rushes were, and she has make St. Bridget crosses.
Oh.
And so we went and found St. Bridget's well, which is heart-shaped. Now, St. Bridget was a figure in Ireland and in Scotland and Iona and the Hebrides, and she's a sacred figure of transitions. This is largely what she is thought of as, and this is the well that it sprung up because of some miracle. I forget what it was behind the creation of that well. But we sat there, we dangled our feet in this very cool water, and she taught us well songs while we tried to make our St. Bridget crosses, right? And the idea was to then have the crosses in St. Bridget's well. Well, I wanted to keep mine. I wanted to try to make. I'm kind of proud of this little thing. I mean, it didn't last, but this is the idea, was to float the crosses. And some people kept theirs, and people who struggled with it were like glad to have it, St. Bridget. So there I am with my St. Bridget cross on the top of Dooney. Yeah. And a little more of that with a very cheesy pose on the right. that was taken, and I was not really aware of it. And I was just sitting there enjoying myself, and the person sends it to me. I'm like, oh, Great. And that's a problem. Aren't they pretty? And I actually remember how to do it. So
We
but-
could do that for Palm Sunday.
I think palms would work.
Yeah.
You've got to have the right kind of greenery, you know, and so some things that she picked up, she thought were rushes weren't, and they would break and snap and
Okay.
they wouldn't fold. But at any rate. So on Wednesday, we went on the 9 mile, perimeter walk of the island here. This is what is called our walking pilgrimage of Iona. And the challenge here was that John Philip and Allie did not really describe how hard this was going to be. And we had a good number of folks in our group who had, you can see a cane right here, some limitations in their mobility. And this is not their fault. It wasn't sold to them very well. And so we really ran into some struggles along the way with people making progress. But the idea was for us to go out and to do this perimeter of Iona. And he'd stop along the way and he would have little teachings along the way. And it really was very, very nice. And so we headed south, not towards the North Beach, but down towards the south. And there's Angels Hill. Angels Hill is where, St. Columba would disappear from his community from time to time, and he'd just be gone. And they were like, where did the boss go, right? Yeah. And so one monk who was a little jealous of him wanted to find out and report back to everybody where he was and what he was off doing. And so he followed him one night, and he finds him going up on top of this hill, and his arms were up in the air, and angels were descending and ascending like Jacob in his dream. And so this became called Angels Hill. And I told Jennifer, this is our retreat. This is our retirement home. The isolation of the lives there, and how remote a lot of this really is. That struck me about that.
So those people off the grid,
Yes,
so they're their own water person and electrician.
and water is a huge issue there. It can be a major issue for them, and the water's gone down from time to time. It's sent over from Mole under, and there's it's yes.
But didn't you say it rains a lot?
It does rain a lot, and so there rain rain collection with brooms and that kind of. Look at the South Beach and just the blue of the water.
Are there any trees other than the one you pointed out at the start?
Not many,
Yeah.
but somebody was asking about the grass. Like the grass, is it always like that? And I told them I never heard in the whole week one motorized instrument cutting grass. Nothing. And I saw one woman out there, and she had a scythe, and she was mowing that way, but otherwise, golf course. The golf course is just out in the middle, and the sheep are out there, and the golf course.
About sheep.
Yeah, you can see some off in the little distance here. Yeah.
Are there any gardens or crops grown?
Yes, there are some community gardens that are near the hotel that different, and the homes are kind of clustered together in the village area, and they've got clusters of gardens between the homes. They said you can walk through. I never felt comfortable doing somebody's property like that, but yes. And there I am. And somebody photoshopped this.
Yeah.
I think photoshopped this one. We did have sheep around. We also had this kind of tilting flag, and I think if they kind of superimposed somehow, somebody with much more talent than I, but that really is pretty good. And here we are on our way. And this is where they're kind of really, I mean, it's been long already. It's a little warm. For us, it's not warm at all, but there was the sun was on us the entire time, and we're heading that way, and the going gets a little rougher as we hit these hillock areas. And there's John Philip giving a little talk, and there they are conferring about what to do about all of us, and it became quite a challenge for people. And here is, you can almost kind of see the downward path here. It's straight down, and people we got really stretched out. Some of us positioned ourselves along the way to kind of help hand people along, but it took a long time. to get, and we were supposed to be doing 9 miles, and we were just at the first, along the way. So we're heading towards St. Columbus Bay over here. This is where he has landed. This is Allie helping somebody along. I love that picture. So I call him a good shepherd picture. And here's the bay, also called the Bay of New Beginnings. That's what he called it when he landed there. This was to be a new start, a new beginning for him and the 12 of his fellow monks that were with him
And where did he come from?
from Ireland.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's the bay. You can't really, and I wish I'd taken some pictures of the rocks themselves. They're all very round, and all smooth, and probably about maybe this big or so, and just beautiful. And we were told to take a rock that represents something that we have never maybe gotten over, we haven't forgiven ourselves for, throw it in the bay. Then take a rock that represents a forgiveness and take that with us. So Natalie said, Iona is very generous with the rocks. And there were people who loaded themselves down. I thought, oh, Bert. You're about to go on to weight gaining program here, sir. There's the water. That's just one of my favorite pictures of that place. Well, from there we went back. We didn't try to do more. We had to get a cab for some of our folks, and we didn't do the circumnavigation of the island. We went back a little different from the way that we went, but this is where the ferry comes on over here, and it's called Martyrs Bay. And this is when the Vikings came. Some 60 or 70 of the monks were killed in that bay. Of course, they did not fight back, and they ended up kind of picking up their stuff and going to Kell in Ireland, and you've heard of the Book of Kells. That was written and created on Ireland, on Iona, and brought to Ireland, and eventually they came back, but that was a couple centuries later after the Vikings. Several of these bays are also called martyr bays, right? So where we did the mandala is also called a martyr bay. That's part of the history.
Was it always the Vikings that killed them?
For the one that I heard about. The one that I heard about, yes. Yeah. And so on the Thursday of that week, we went to Staffa, which is this little island. Are you all familiar with Staffa? It's part of what they call the Giant's Causeway. And the Giant's Causeway are these islands. They're parts in Ireland, and then there's Staffa right here in the Hebrides. And they are made of basalt, and I'll show you pictures of this.
I've been to the Irish part of it.
Okay, right, and so the legend is that that Fingal was a Scottish giant.
Finn McCool, they call it.
Finn McCool. Okay, all right. So they call him Fingal here. There's Fingal's cave on Staffa. And he was in war with another, and I don't remember the name of the Irish giant, but they built a causeway. They built a bridge across from Ireland over to Staffa and on to Scotland for them to fight and have a battle. And so the Irish giant comes across the causeway, and he is enormous compared to Fingal. And so Fingal's like, oh my gosh, this guy is going to slaughter me. And so he confers with his wife. His wife says, I got an idea. And so she dresses him up like a baby, right? Because he's a lot smaller. So she puts him over like a baby. And then she invites the Irish giant to come in and have a meal. And she bakes bread with iron in it, right? With chunks of iron in it. And then she makes a little loaf off to the side that isn't, right? And so she feeds the bread to the Irish giant, and he breaks all of his teeth on the bread. And then she's like feeding the baby, like, the baby's fine with this. Why? Are you sure you're up to this? And he runs across, and he breaks the bridge as he is fleeing, and that's the origins of the Giant's Causeway. That's the legend here. So keep that in mind as we kind of go. Here we are on our boat. Off we go. And there's some seals along the way.
Oh, wow.
A lot of seals, yes. And this is Staffa. And here are these columns of basalt. and they are six-sided. It's created by some volcanic kind of action. I don't know the science behind it, but there's a recrystallization that happens, and they form these almost perfect six-sided little hexagons that go. And there's a way. Here's Fingal's Cave right here. There's a way you can kind of walk. So we kind of moored ourselves along that on this other side, and we had the option of going into Fingal's Cave, or we go visit the puffins, or both. But you've got an hour, right? And so I'm like both. So here we are. It's just stunning. The view. When you're in Fingal's Cave.
How did you go in by boat?
No, we didn't. We walked.
Walked into the cave?
Yes, I'll show you that in a second here.
This
Oh, yeah,
guy is what it
that's-
looks like in Ireland.
Yeah,
It looks
yeah.
like a bunch of six-sided organ pipes.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Walked down.
Organ pipes. Yes. Looks like somebody has like done this, constructed this. This is a little islet that's just right off the edge. And this is me walking right along here and looking over at that. And so there's that. That gives you a sense of what this is how that island is created. And here's the walkway. Now, once again, we undersold the difficulty of this, right? So we've got people on this trip who really should not be trying to do this, but nobody told them that and it's 150 steps up to the top, to puffins, right? So I'm going along here, and one of the members of our group says, "Oh, good, you're here. You can help me," you know. So like, yeah, TikTok with the clock. Like puffins. If you happen to know, I love puffins. My very favorite bird. That was one of the things I really wanted to do on this trip. And the inner Farn, an island where they tend to migrate and habitat is closed because a bird flu. This is my one opportunity for puffins, right? So, but I'm like, we can do this. I know we can do this. And so here we are. This is the stepway, the walkway. And it gets very narrow, heading into Fingal's Cave. Yeah, this is not for pain.
Yeah.
Right? And
So you walk along that right-hand side.
No, it's very tall in here.
Wow.
But you're walking on the side, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
The right hand side.
Over on the right side, you're walking.
Walking on the right side here. Here's,
Oh, with somebody that.
I recorded this.
Yeah.
I wonder how deep that crevice is.
Getting deeper, right?
I could have spent a week in that particular space.
Did you get to
That was at the end. Well, you could go a little further, but the stepping walking way, there were younger people who were doing that. Not this guy. So we spent some time there, and then we did the 150 steps up to the top. And this was the way to where the puffins they're nesting back over here. Again, not easy going, but my companion was very stalwart in this. So she was made it there. And there they are. And here's a little video of them. You can see them.
They have a hard time taking off.
They fly down.
They're small. Like the geese. You did all this in an hour?
An hour's time, yeah. I did not get to spend very much time here with the puffin. As you can see, and what would happen would be people, when groups would arrive off these boats, right, on all the puffins will go off and they'll go into the sea. They all just like fly off, they leave, abandon their little ones in the nest. They got nests, they're buried deep in the ground there. And then they'll come back. And it kind of seemed to me it's like we're trying to them just like another flock of birds that come along and they have to make sure we're okay, and then we're okay. our flock kind of comes and goes, and they kind of get a little startled, but not too much, and they keep on doing their thing. But that was our time. There's a guy with a professional camera, and he took some amazing pictures. And this is one. They take off beautifully, and they land very clever. They're hilarious to watch, but they're like this little arrow that just kind of dives into the water.
Oh, neat.
And you know that video I showed you earlier that I took, the one that came up and landed, I walked over while I was elsewhere and started rubbing his bill against the bill of the other, and that's probably how they make sure that you are who you say you are. And I had my evening strolls in Iona, and like I said, this is midnight,
Wow.
so it was darkish and the sun had gone down, but it wasn't pitch black dark. And one of our members had bought herself a $35 headlamp, right? She wore that thing. I'm wearing it. I spent the money. And it's right around sunset or so, and I'm out there with the sheep on the golf course. It's beautiful.
So is there also very little daylight during the,
Winter, no, there isn't.
Yeah, I would imagine. It's the already dark. There's a little sheep at the very top. And there I am.
Oh,
On the last day, I put on the kilt, and I thought I'm gonna wear this, take a picture wherever I go. And so I put on the kilt, and they all thought this was great. And then one of the wait staff came up to me, and she said, "So you're a steward? This is a steward, right?"
Yeah.
And I said, "No, my church got this for me. It's funny," and it was not funny.
No.
It was in the islands, in the Highlands, it is serious business. And her face just like went. And I thought, I'm not doing this again. Honestly, it's a hurtful thing. If I had my own plaids, if I knew if it were authentic to me, then that's a different matter.
Yeah.
But I did one more. You'll see it another time. But this is the end of Iona. So Iona for me, I know I've taken all of our time in one spot, and I am so sorry. But I did want to say, Iona for me was really that liminal space. It really opened me wide open. And it felt to me, my experience there, I just wanted to be outside all the time. I just wanted to be outside. I want to be outside. I want to be outside.
What was the
And
temperature?
I carried that with me. The temperature was probably around 65 to 70 every day. Burning hot, for the residents of Iona. But I'm like, this is paradise. It is 95 degrees. I didn't know what it was. I knew it was 95 here. And it absolutely opened me up and greened me. I really felt very, very refreshed after my time in Iona. And anytime a little complaint at any time would come in my little head, I'd go, yeah, but look at this, And that's something I want to try to carry with me, as far as things that I carry forward, is that appreciation. Any questions or thoughts? Golly, I'm gonna get us to Gladstone anyway. So on to Wales. And so I got myself back over to Glasgow, rented a car, and drove. This is all highway driving. The highways are these the M5, M4 goes down. It's all like our interstates, So I was able to drive on the left, on the correct side of the road, and just sit there in the left-hand lane. Now I was read the riot act when I rented the car. Don't mess with the tires. We take a picture of the tires. The tires, and we'll know. And I'm like, okay, don't mess with the tires. Because, well, here's the thing. When I started doing this drive on down to St. David on these little windy roads, somehow they build their roads with curbs. These are little tiny roads, right? They've got like a foot and a half, 2 foot curbs to them. So everyone, and I just hit it hitting the tire. So I was like, I definitely called down. But I got down to it's the northeast corner. It's called Hawarden, and there we go. And this is a car. I called her Bridget. And Bridget was fantastic. She was a hybrid. You could plug her in, but I didn't dare because I was having hard enough time to stay on the left side of the road.
Yeah.
So I just put the gas in Bridget and off we went. And here is the Gladstone Library. I don't have a lot of pictures of this, but this is where I went. William Gladstone built this back in at the turn of the 19th century to be a residential library for mostly for seminary type people who are studying for clergy and what have you, as a place, and they couldn't afford to have done this otherwise. So he collected books all of his life. He finally thought, I just have got to share these books, and he decided he would do it in this kind of way. So the library portion is over here, and the residential portion is pretty much over on that end. Very luxurious. It was much nicer than I'm used to. And here he is. And I didn't take pictures of the interior of the place, and I apologize for that because it just didn't occur to me. But next door is St. Daniel's. St. Daniel was a bishop in that region right around the same period of time as Columba. So kind of that 6th century, and was a very important figure in that part of Wales. And so St. Daniel's Scottish Episcopal Church. It had signs were open, but they were never open. I'd love to get to see the inside, but that was this is what I saw out of my window, and the bells would go off every hour, and it's just very, very picturesque. And mostly I spent time with the books. You know, I spent some time here with Alexander Carmichael's Carmina Gadelica, which is a collection of prayers and hymns from the Hebrides. I looked for older versions of that and found some of those. I spent the afternoon reading the life history of St. Cuthbert, because I'm walking on his walk, written by a man who had one time been the prior in Lindisfarne. And so I had a very good time at Gladstone Library. And we are at I think we're at our time. Are we at our time? About noon?
Exactly.
Okay.
I got a
I
question.
did not get as far as I intended to. Yes. Yes.
When did you get the red plaid?
We gave it to him.
The
Yeah.
The church folks, all of you gave that to me on my last Sunday that I was here.
Oh.
And so my intention was to just like have a picture of here it is, here he is, here he is. But it hurt some feelings the first time I put it on, and I realized, and I had conversations afterwards. Yeah, that would probably not be a good thing to do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Emily's girlfriend Carolina is from Mexico, and she said it would probably be like wearing a sombrero or some other type of traditional wear where my family comes from, and thinking it's kind of fun, funny, and that's not the intention at all, but yeah. So
I never would have thought that.
no, it didn't occur to me, but I tried to listen to that.
The shops are all full of them.
Oh, and they'll sell it to anybody.
Yeah.
Well, here's it, yeah.
Yeah, they don't have to say.
That's a really
They're
good
really
point.
expensive.
They are really expensive. Yeah, they have a full quilt, and I'll show this to you also. We saw one put together from I guess
One single piece.
one
of
single
fabric.
piece,
Yeah.
14 yards.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's something like that,
And
and it's folded
together.
together. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
Wow.
it's amazing to
I've
watch.
seen a video of a guy.
We went to
doing that.
Culloden and they did that there. I'm gonna scooch us all the way to the very end of my presentation for our closing prayer, and we will do more.
Shows those.
I know. We'll have to go a
I
little.
wanna hear about all that. You might have to make this 3 something.
I might have to, because
How long does it take?
It's gotta be the
Oh,
dark.
dear.
Whiskey.
Yeah.
Single malt.
Oh, here we are. So John Philip Newell did this. This is the Lord's Prayer, kind of reinterpreted a little bit. And so let's pray this aloud If you can see it, can you see it? I'll pray it, and if you can see it, pray along. If not, just let it wash over you. Ground of all being,
Mother of life, Father of the universe, your name is sacred beyond speaking. May we know your presence. May your longings be our longings, in heart and in action. May there be food for the human family today, and for the whole earth community. Forgive us the falseness of what we have done, as we forgive those who are untrue to us. Do not forsake us in our times of conflict, but lead us into new beginnings, for the light of life, the vitality of life,
are
in
you?
yours now and forever.
He moves every day with that, and it really is.
Let's keep that handy.
Yeah.
What's that?
Did he write that?
He did write that, yes.
Yeah.
The Lord's Prayer, so it's hard to say, but yes,
Yeah.
inspired by it, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good, well, we will pick this back up again, and about pacing.